It may change the whole race ecosystem. I will need to deal with that later. In the city that stayed above the water, it was even quieter than before. Quinn and Nog had been here for a while now, and had seen countless people hurrying to leave the island, and eventually, the whole island had become a ghost town. The only ones that were left were relatively old. Anyways, just hopefully in this situation, it was positive. Either way, the worst that could happen to her was death. If he did nothing, she would die anyway. Eventually, though, Quinn had found another key source in the brain. It was as if it was another living creature in the shape of something similar to a worm. Let's get rid of you first. Quinn directed all the keys straight to the parasite, and with his strong power, he destroyed it in an instant. However, even after destroying the abnormal key, it did next to nothing. Is she going to be okay? Nog asked. For now, I'm keeping her energy alive, but something is stopping her other organs from working. It's as if her whole body is paralyzed. She needs to heal. Determine something. In the city that stayed above the water, it was even quieter than before. Quinn and Nog had been here for a while now, and had seen countless people hurrying to leave the island, and eventually, the whole island had become a ghost town. The only ones that were left were relatively old, and finding it difficult to travel, or seemed too senile to know that something big was going on in the first place, which was why the two of them had decided to relax by the beach for a bit. Quinn was lying down, just enjoying his peace and quiet for a while. There was no training involved, no strange mystic celestial stuff, or vampire problems to deal with. At the same time, Nog was by his side doing the same. Aren't you a bit worried? Those guys were strong enough to attack the cruise ship, Nog asked. I mean, I know you're strong as well, but aren't you a little too relaxed? Looking into the sky, Quinn could still see the large fleets and ships flying in the distance. In his head, he was trying to determine something. I think I can do it, Quinn mumbled. Sorry? Nog replied, not hearing fully what he had said. I'm not worried because Syl is there. Syl will be able to handle whatever comes his way, and if he needs help, I'm sure he can send some sort of signal for me, Quinn replied relaxingly. It was then that Nog stood up, and unlike Quinn, he had relaxed plenty of times before, and he was worried about the captain. Yes, the captain was strong, but to go up against the whole army, just with 4 people, sounded a little ridiculous. Well, if you need me, then you can just send me a signal as well, Nog replied, walking towards a pier that was set out on the beach. There was no hydro station at this section, and instead, it looked like a small little boat activity had been set out. People could rent out boats. They would then use them to explore the vast sea and surface. Heading to the area, it didn't look like the staff had also left the island, so Nog decided to hop in. The boat was round, and it wasn't really a boat, but looked more like a pod spaceship. However, it couldn't fly. When he pressed the accelerator, like on a car, the boat started to move, and there was also a steering wheel to direct it. The little vehicle was faster than Nog had thought, as it skidded across the water like a jet ski. Whoa, now this is more like it, Nog said with a huge grin on his face, as the vehicle bumped up and down on the waves. For a second, Quinn had peeked at Nog, but then leaned back to relax. Just be careful that some giant sea monster doesn't come and kill you, Quinn muttered. He wouldn't really be surprised if the sea monster suddenly popped out, but then he was also hoping that Nog could deal with it on its own. While exploring the sea, Nog was making a note of where he went, and could see that the pod had a return to function. He assumed this was the shop, which meant he could explore as far out as he liked, and that's what he did. He soon came across a few more islands, but there looked to be no life on them at all. Still, it was nice for Nog to experience sea travel rather than space travel. After exploring for a while, he soon spotted something out in the sea. What is that? Nog slowed down the vehicle and went closer and closer to it. Opening up the glass roof of the pod, Nog took a closer look at the floating object. It's a person! A fish woman! Nog shouted, expecting someone to come and help, but quickly realized that he was the only one out in the middle of the sea. So in the end, after tossing and turning, Nog decided to jump into the water. Pulling the body was a lot harder than he thought, but using his strength, he managed to place her on the outside of the boat, and then getting himself up, he then pulled her up. Now back inside the vehicle, Nog was able to get a good look at her, and he couldn't believe it. Quinn! Quinn, come here quick! Nog was shouting as he parked up his boat and was holding a female in his hands. At first, Quinn thought that maybe there really was a sea monster to deal with, But as long as he wasn't in the water, he wouldn't have a problem with sea creatures if he ran into them. Nog quickly ran across the sand and placed the body right down in front of Quinn. "What do we do? I just found her floating in the sea like this," Nog said, panicked. "This is Cyril, right? The princess's sister?" Quinn replied. "Why was she in the middle of the ocean?" "I don't know, but she's not breathing, and since she floated to the top, doesn't that mean she's dead?" Looking at her closely and pressing his hand on her body, Quinn couldn't feel a breath, and there was no heartbeat, but he could sense one thing, and that was life energy. "Maybe I can do something," Quinn mumbled as he put both hands on her forehead. After sensing her ki, Quinn started to move it toward her heart. He then controlled it, so it would start to pump itself. It didn't take long for the heart to resume beating, but that wasn't enough. Inside her, there was strange energy. "What is this around her head?" Quinn thought, as he started to move his own ki into her body, but not too much, since he knew he was now a celestial. Even his ki could react with people in different ways, just hopefully in this situation, it was positive. Either way, the worst that could happen to her was death. If he did nothing, she would die anyway, in the shape of something similar to a worm. "Let's get rid of you first." Quinn directed all the ki straight to the parasite, and with his strong power, he destroyed it in an instant. However, even after destroying the abnormal ki, it did next to nothing. "Is she going to be okay?" Nog asked. "For now, I'm keeping her energy alive, but something is stopping her other organs from work." Situation, he felt that giving her heavenly energy would not do much, but perhaps he could do something else. In the past, if he faced a similar situation, he could always do something. Making a small cut on his hand, Quinn placed it over her mouth. "Let's find out if a fish vampire is a thing," Quinn wondered, letting his blood drip into her mouth while activating the blood ritual. It had been a long time since Quinn had done such a thing, and he had thought he might never have to do it again. But here he was doing it on another planet. Unlike the time before, when one would shake and move in pain from the transformation, there was no reaction. But that was most likely due to the state that she was in. "If this damages the whole race ecosystem, I will need to deal with that later. Maybe after this is over, I will have to bring her with me," Quinn thought. "Blood ritual has been completed. You have successfully, for the first time, created a new subclass, Mervamp." A new subclass? Quinn wasn't expecting this, and it was then that he could see and hear that her organs were starting to come back to working condition. He had somehow managed to save her, but it would be a while until she recovered. Standing up, Quinn looked above. "The fact that she was in that condition and is up here might mean that you're right. Something is going on. Why don't we try and get them to come up here?" Quinn stated. The blood that started to come out from the cut, made on his hand, had the red vampire aura with it. It started to change form and turn into a large spear made of blood, celestial energy, and blood aura. On top of that, as always, Quinn would add his powers of ki. "What are you planning on?" Before Nog could finish his sentence, Quinn ran, instantly crossing the beach within a mere second, and threw the blood spear. It left his hand and went into the sky. Before Nog could understand what was happening, the large, giant spaceship above exploded, coloring the sky in a slight orange and yellow color. "I knew I could hit it," whispered Quinn. Nodded, raising their weapons in the air like some type of army. Having felt the large turrets before and the dark figures in the sea, Syl knew immediately that these were the dangerous large sea beasts that roam the sea. However, this city was a lot larger than the last place they were at, and there were a lot more large shadows going through the sea. "It has to be that damn blue pearl that's causing them all to come out here," Syl thought. The question is, can he control the sea beasts, or is he doing some sort of suicidal attack? Syl could see that Wince was still fighting. She was thrusting her trident, and was doing a good job of pushing Yanni back. In truth, the smart thing to do was for Syl to get the blue pearl and destroy it, but he wanted the princess to get her own revenge. On top of that, it looked like his Dalki friend was at his limit with his own fight. Quinn did say to push him to the end, but at this rate, he would end up dead. "I guess it's all up to me," Syl sighed. "Still, there is a path to solve this in a way that everyone wins in the end. It just means it's a lot more work for me." Changing his abilities, Syl began to clone himself. He started to make more copies of himself until there were around 30 of him in total. was the choice of weapons. The portal that each sill could open up was linked to the same space, so they had access to whatever weapons they wanted. Although Sill only had around 10 demon tier items inside, he still had plenty of strong weapons for them all to choose from. The predators, who had a boost of strength from the pearl activating their celestial energy, were stunned. They felt like they finally had the upper hand, and then the strange human had done this. They were unsure if the strength of each clone was the same as the original, but if the one that was helping the Dalki out was anything to go by, they felt like they were in serious trouble, and no one wanted to attack first. All right, everyone, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but do your best to fight at whoever is going to come your way. I won't slow down for anyone, the real Sill ordered. The rest of them nodded, raising their weapons in the air like some type of army. Straight after, each of them used the water ability to swim away. They headed to the edge of the city, spreading out and surrounding the place in a large circle. At the same time, there were a couple that stayed in front of Sill with the demon tier weapons, and one of them had gone over to the sea beast that had helped them out. The clone Sill soon opened a large portal the size of the giant beast and ordered it to go inside. You have done well and have helped us, so I don't want you to die. Although if you do die, then I promise to make you into a nice weapon, Sill smiled. The beast listened and got into the portal, which quickly closed up. The people in the city were wondering what the strange clones were doing. Why were they on the edge of the city, and why had they surrounded the place? But the next second, they somewhat understood. A large water pump burst from the hands of one of the clones and headed straight for the dark, ghostly figure. He hit the beast, but at the same time unleashed his own back to force attack, firing a red laser from somewhere. But using a small dagger weapon, he was able to deflect the attack to retaliate against the beast. At the same time, as the other large beasts were coming closer, the clones were using their strength and might to take them out as well. Is that person protecting us from the beasts? But why? The townsfolk said. He's with the princess. She did shout about having some type of warrior on her side. The one that should be protecting us, though, is Yanni, not some stranger from another race. He talks about the pride of the predators, but what are they doing? It was clear that this act from Sill was starting to turn public opinion. Seeing how strongly the princess was now fighting Yanni back, the small, nearly invisible hope that they had on the other side was starting to return. The only thing was, Sill wasn't doing this to protect them. This was only the start of his plan. Now that the clones had gone away from the real Sill's side, the predators were confident once again and had charged in. The real Sill didn't have to worry, as he had left the two by his side with strong weapons in front of him. Instead, he needed to focus on something else. Placing both hands on the ground, Sill was ready. After doing all of this, I don't know how many MC points I'm going to have left. So Dalki, Princess, it's all up to you. Light started to shine right underneath Sill's hand, and in the next second, the ground started to freeze. It spread out from the area he was in and crossed the entire floor. The fish people were scared of this. They decided to float up a little so they wouldn't be touching the seafloor. The ice continued to spread out more and more, reaching the very edges of the entire city. Even though the public didn't know how someone was capable of such a thing, they knew that one would have to have an enormous amount of power to cover such a large space. But what was the reason behind it? Now, here comes the hard part. Sill wiped his head as he braced himself and placed both hands on the ground again. Immediately, the whole city arose from where it was. It was moving through the sea at an incredible speed. No longer was the city attached to the floor of the sea, but instead, it was on a giant ice pillar that was getting larger by the second. Due to the force felt on their bodies, many of the mermarials were on the floor lying flat. What is going on? Yanni shouted. After the sudden acceleration had stopped, they were now traveling through the sea. The ice pillar was getting larger and larger, and the sea creatures that they had avoided had been replaced with new ones. They were attracted by the Although the last statement seemed unlikely, from what Syl had heard, it was quite common for Quinn to go unseen and suddenly disappear. But he didn't want to take any chances until he witnessed Doggett grabbing his neck. He had hit his limit and was gasping for air badly. It was at that moment, pushing his MC cells and powers to the max, Syl made the ice pillar move as quickly as possible and charged it through the sea. The sea became clearer and easier to see now that the light from the sun could be seen. In the next second, the entire city crashed through the surface. It was a hard hit for the city, as some of the grand structures had cracked and fallen in the process. At the same time, all of their memorials were wobbly on their feet for a few seconds. Some had even been chucked airborne and landed back down due to the speed they had risen at. The city was solid, though. It didn't wobble on the surface of the water because there was a giant pillar of ice underneath it. However, after getting to the surface, Syl's job wasn't done. With his hands still stuck onto the floor, he used even more power to stretch out the surface of the sea, making it larger than the area of the city by a good mile or so. At the same time, he was making sure to freeze an amount of water that would be considerably thick and not break if an attack or two hit it. Finally, after all that, Syl was exhausted and fell on his back. It looked like on the journey here, most of his clones had perished. The good thing was they each knew if they were about to die and would open up the portal, shoving their weapons back in before dying. As for why Syl had done his little ice platform at the end, it was due to him not wanting to rely on the pillar. He wanted to create his own island so that if the beasts attacked the pillar from underneath, it wouldn't be a problem. The rest is down to you guys now, Syl smiled. While lying down on his back, Syl noticed something strange. It was the color of the sky. It was still quite white, but it looked almost as if the sky had turned somewhat orange and filled with dust as well. What is going on? The next second, in the distance, a large explosion had occurred beyond the sky. It looked like it was almost in space even. Ah, screw it. Let me just rest a bit, and then I'll help the others out, Syl said. He wasn't the only one that noticed the strange color in the sky and the explosions. The people looked up, wondering what they were, but one person knew straight away. The fleets are being destroyed. Our forces. What is happening right now? Is this all you're doing? Yanni pointed at Wins. I'm not sure. It might be, but you have bigger things to worry about. Princess waved her trident and water started to gather around it. She then swiped it across the floor, and a large wave hit Yanni, taking him off his feet. Leaping from her position, she slammed the point of the trident at Yanni. Lifting up his hand, he tried stopping it, but the point went right through, piercing his skin. Are you trying to get rid of the memorial race by bringing these outsiders in? If you get rid of everyone, then how will we defend ourselves? Yanni asked. From what? Princess replied, twisting the trident. Water jets shot out of the trident, hitting Yanni in the body. The force took his hand out of the end of the trident and sent him across the room. Protect us from these imaginary threats? You're the biggest threat to our race, Wince screamed. At the same time, there was another person that was happy that they were finally out of the water. Doggett was on one knee, gasping in the air. This air. I've never felt so dependent on anything before, Doggett said to himself as he slowly stood up from the ground. Blood was still dripping all over his body from the wounds he had before. Seeing this, one of the predators, a hammerhead who was close by, had decided to act, thinking he was on his last legs. The fishman now had legs instead of a fin, but he still had great running speed. The speed was not as fast as when he was in the water, though. He swung his head first, and the Dalki reached out his hand, grabbing him. Your attack is stronger. I can feel this energy in you, the Dalki said, as he coughed out blood. A strange power had gone through his body, but he didn't care because he knew it was only going to make him stronger. Now, out of the water, he could use all the pent-up damage. Using his laser eyes, he hit the hammerhead directly. The laser burned the skin of the body slowly, as there was some resistance until eventually there was no head left. Letting go, the predator fell to the floor. Finally, the five-spike Dalki is acting like a five-spike, Syl said, still watching everything from his position. There were interesting fights all over, and the clones that were still alive had come back to help him in his fight against the predators. It didn't take long for the clones to finish off the annoying predators once they were out of the water. Everything is passed over Sill's head. As he looked up, something fell from the sky. It wasn't just an object. It was one of the big ships in the fleet. "Look out! Take cover!" the people shouted as they all hid in their houses. Fortunately, the large ship looked like it was heading right for the square where all the others were fighting. "Stop making my job harder!" Sill placed his hands on the ground, making sure the ice was reinforced. The large ship crashed right into the square, chucking pieces and bits everywhere. For a second, there were some cracks in the ice, but as quickly... that she had relied on, the person she had put all her hopes into taking back her planet. She just never thought that he would have such a big fear of the deep blue sea, but she was lucky that his friend, as well as the captain of the cruise, had been enough to help her. The real question on her mind, and in Sill's thoughts, was just what was Quinn doing this entire time? Back on the beach, before the city had been risen by Sill above the water, Quinn had just turned Cyril into a new type of subclass. Checking out the system, he was wondering if there were any different traits to the subclass. Usually, when creating a subclass for the first time, the system would prompt him with a load of information on the subclass, telling him the usual traits, special powers and more, but this time there was nothing. Is this because it's completely new? The system has no information on such a thing? Quinn thought. What he had done was travel into the unknown. Quinn had given his celestial energy to the Amra race people. That didn't seem to be a problem, as it hadn't changed them so much, only made them more powerful. However, this was different. Quinn was using his traits as a vampire to create what was in front of him, but there was nothing that he could do for now, and it looked like she wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. "Why did you just attack that large spaceship?" Nog shouted. "Are you trying to let them know where we are?" After destroying the ship with his large blood spear, Quinn was looking through the system to try to learn more about Cyril. To Nog, it looked like the acts of a madman who would constantly mumble, talk to himself, or just gaze off into the distance. Now, he had just taken out a large ship, as if he had grabbed a piece of fruit to eat. "Yeah," Quinn replied. "If the others are in trouble, then we need to grab their attention and pull them up here. And without a better way other than getting in the water, this is our only choice." Shadow started to cover Quinn, and it was the first time Nog had seen such a thing, causing him to step back. "These humans are strange to have these mystical powers, and now shadows as well," Nog thought. With the demon tier chest piece now equipped, Quinn sprouted out his wings and covered them with the shadow, just as he usually would have. "Look after her, and if she wakes up and looks like she's trying to eat you, stay away from her," were Quinn's final words as he flew up in the sky. He flew past, and as he expected, the other smaller ships, as well as the larger fleets that had been orbiting in space, were heading in the direction where the attack had come from. They were leaving space and coming closer and closer to the planet's orbit. Finally, Quinn stopped in the air as he could see a strange pod-like vehicle. It was a see-through ball with a pilot inside. The vehicle also had two laser pointers sticking out from it. Soon, 4 of them ship to arrive with their guns pointed at him. Please don't fire at me. I just want a way to contact this Yanni guy. If not, then maybe one of you guys knows how to get back to Earth, Quinn asked. Fire! Once again, it was attack first and ask questions later, but Quinn had been prepared for this. He covered himself with the wings, blocking all the laser shots with them. Although he could try and avoid them all with his speed, that was tiring work for this lot. At the same time, the group was firing from all sorts of different angles, for his last trick of firing back at them to work. Instead, he turtled up and covered himself with the wings. He had his blood swords do the work. They flew through the air, going right through the attackers' hearts, slicing through them, and continuing to travel through their bodies with ease. They were swirling around the entire room, and their attention was focused on the blood swords, but firing at them did nothing. In the end, there was silence as Quinn dealt with them all. Through a series of events similar to this one, he had ended up going to the main command center of the ship, and in the end, destroying the ship, as the captains themselves would opt to self-explode the ship. It wasn't a problem for Quinn, as he could just use his shadow space while the explosion was going off. It was time for him to move to the next one. Using Ki, Blood Aura, the shadow, and very little of his martial arts, he could take on anyone that was on board the ships, and eventually, he found a captain that was a little more compliant. After seeing 3 of the large ships already being destroyed, it looked like he knew what was about to come next. Take me to Yanni, Quinn stated, with the captain's head pressed against the control panel of the ship. He was quite frustrated that the same thing kept happening, again and again. Even using his influence skill was useless, because most of these guys didn't even know where he was. That is, until a small blip appeared on the radar. It was close to them, and directly beneath them. Quinn had the perfect idea on how to drop down and get there quicker, to show the others he meant business. All of those events had led to where Quinn was right now, standing on top of the ship. Who are you? Yanni asked. And why are you standing on one of my ships? Out of anger, Yanni had thrown out a whirlpool of water from his hand directly toward Quinn. Seeing this, Quinn lifted his hand and swung it. The next moment, it looked like the water just disappeared into nothing. The third stage of Ki was enough to break up the attack that had been used. That is the person who I brought, Quinn said, smiling. Right now, looking at the man standing on the ship, Yanni's blood was beyond the boiling point. He had no clue who this person was, but it was clear that they weren't a Mermarial, just like the one before. It was twice now that someone had come in and interrupted his plans. They had significantly changed the flow of everything that was going on. This was also the exact problem that Yanni was talking about. The reason why he wanted to take over the race and focus on strength was so that the outsiders of different races couldn't affect them. Rather than suppressing the great powers they had, they should have empowered them. The only thing was, after that one attack, Yanni was unsure how powerful this person was. Ignoring the crashing ship, the fight with the others soon continued. The predators were going for the Dalki, while the remaining few were going after Syl. Now that Quinn was here, he didn't want to waste any more time at all. Yanni had practically blinked for a second, and suddenly, Quinn was no longer in his sights. Instead, he was holding on to one of the other predators. Skill, celestial drain is being used. On one hand, he held a predator by the head, and on the other, he was controlling his blood to attack the remaining others. Then, when finally drained, Quinn had gathered 2 blood rifles in both of his hands, aimed carefully, and fired them out, killing the other 2 predators that were fighting against the Dalki. The celestial energy that he got from the predators wasn't worth his time. Who is that person? People who were still hiding in the city asked. They just killed the predators with ease. This makes no sense. Now that they had all been dealt with, there was only one more to go. You know, I could have taken them all out as well, Syl asked. You tried fighting in the water while looking after everyone at the same time. I know you could have, Syl. It seems you took a lot on your shoulders this time, Quinn stated, and looked toward Yanni, who had taken a step back. Wait, Princess shouted, slamming her trident into the ground. Please, Quinn, I know you have helped me, all of you have, at my request, but this is something that I need to do. Please let me deal with him. The reason why Quinn didn't hold back, unlike Syl, was because he felt like they had spent enough time here. Of course, They didn't want to destroy the whole planet and kill innocent lives, but everyone they needed was here. When looking at Wince, Quinn noticed the trident and gave Syl a look, who just gave an awkward smile back. "Let her have this one. I think she just might win," Syl winked. The large ship that had crashed down in the square had taken up half of it, but the other half was clear for the two of them to fight. Doggoth, Syl, and Quinn were now watching the outcome. The trident was a natural weapon in Wince's hand. She had hardly used a weapon like this before, only swords and others when the royal family would train her. Yet it felt like an extension of her body. Even now out of the water, it was so light. She continually spun the trident around herself, and then finally thrust it forward toward Yanni by shooting out a jet stream of water. "If you think for a second I'm going to give up now when I was so close, then you are dead wrong." Yanni jumped to the side, avoiding the strike. It was one of the few times the jet stream of water from the trident had actually avoided him. In his hands, he had also gathered balls of water, although they didn't look normal as they moved about. Immediately, he started to throw them toward the princess, one after another. Wince, unsure what these were, had decided to avoid the first one. She jumped back, and the second the ball of water touched the ground, it exploded, and several splashes of water came out in all different types of directions. Some of them came towards her, but spinning the trident, she was able to block the attack. When spinning the trident, a strange blue glow would come out of it. Still, several more attacks were coming, and hence, she was unable to avoid them all. Eventually, one of the water bombs exploded next to her, and she couldn't stop the slashes of water that were going toward her feet. It had caused a big, deep cut, and her blood was now spilling on the ice. "The wound is quite deep. I won't be able to move as well as I could before." Seeing this as an opportunity, Yanni created a larger water bomb by combining two of them together and threw it towards her again. Just as it looked like the water bomb was about to hit the ground, she propped herself up on the trident and then used it to lift her own body above in the air. The water bomb had exploded right where the trident was, but she knew a weapon like hers could take it. Pushing off while in the air, upside down, she lifted herself as if someone was doing a type of high jump and held the trident in her hand like a spear. Wince's hand was glowing slightly blue as she threw it out, and while in the middle of the air, it started to multiply, turning into 6 different tridents. With the way they were coming towards Yanni, it was impossible for him to avoid them all, and one of the tridents stuck right through his arm. Activating the blue glow around her hand, the trident suddenly appeared right back in her hand again. "I told you she would do all right, and it looks like she finally learned how to use the thing. Although I can create quite a few tridents, that thing is still better in my hands," Syl said. "You think this is over, don't you? I can tell from the look on your face." Yanni had one of his arms holding the wound, applying pressure to it, but in one of the others was the blue pearl he had been holding the entire time. "All of you will wish that you joined my side." Yanni threw the blue pearl on the floor, and it broke. Immediately, a large amount of energy could be felt escaping out of the ball. Seeing this, Quinn and Syl knew it was celestial energy. The two of them jumped and leaped to where Wince was, as this would no longer be a fair fight. The sea outside of the ice started to become wild, dark clouds gathered above them all, and the wind began to pick up as well. The people seeing all of this thought that a catastrophe was about to strike. "Please, Yongu, rise and teach all of these fools a lesson. Show them why the predators have worshipped you," Yanni laughed. The blue mist coming out of the pearl started to gather into a pure blue energy form. It was starting to make out a shape, a large figure that was a little bigger than Yanni himself. An outline was starting to appear. It had large wings growing from its back, a face of a sea creature, a mix between a shark and an octopus, yet had a figure of a human. When the outline finally finished forming, the blue energy particles dispersed, and without a doubt, what they were staring at now was a god, another celestial. Immediately, Yanni bowed down in front of him. "Oh, please, great master, get rid of these fools who wish to take over your planet." Looking at the creature, there was a shiver in all of the people's spines, and even Wince was taken aback. "A real god, the god of the sea. The predators really did serve him. It wasn't a rumor after all." Now Wince felt guilty. guilty for bringing these two along to suffer a cruel death there was nothing they could do. Yongu was staring at the celestial BB, having been summoned. He then tilted his head down to look at the so-called intruders. Who dares disturb my... Yongu's words were cut short as soon as he laid eyes on the intruders. There was silence as he blinked a couple of times and suddenly got down on his knees. Please, great celestial BB, please spare me. The great god of the whole mermarial race was on his knees, begging for his life. Everyone at the scene was so stunned by the actions they were...
In a world of empty fridges, a hero emerges. McDelivery on the McDonald's app. Now get all your faves with a $0 delivery fee. So when hunger hits, will you strike back? McDelivery on the McDonald's app. Now on a phone near you. $0 delivery fee. 11% service fee and $2 small order fee on orders under $12 before taxes and fees. At participating McDonald's in Canada on McDelivery orders placed using the McDonald's app. App download and registration required. The taxes still apply.
Were seeing that they had stepped out of their homes and the shelter they were hiding behind. Some of them even rubbed their eyes and pinched themselves, but without a doubt they weren't dreaming. The one that was currently bowing down on the ground was a god. Not just any god, but one who looked like a fishman from the mermarial race. They knew quite a bit about this god and their powers, as their history books have described him well. He was a powerful being who helped the mermarial race in tough times, helping the predators of the sea. However, in recent times, he hadn't been seen during the Divide, and he had slowly become more of a rumor over the years. The only thing, it was clear he was real. Someone had been giving the predators of today their powers. No one knew whether it was the old god or not, but when they saw him, they knew everything was true. Something inside their bodies was shaking as they felt his power. So why was this powerful and mighty god now bowing down in front of these outsiders? It didn't make any sense. The thing was, in all honesty, Quinn was also confused by what was happening right now. This is a celestial. I can tell by their energy. Why are they acting like this? I haven't seen this person before, Quinn thought, trying to remember. Yongu! Yanni shouted by his side. He was nervous while looking back and forth between Quinn and his god. What are you doing? You should not be on your knees. Instead, you should use your great power to eliminate these invaders. You yourself said you would get rid of anyone who came in. In the middle of his sentence, Yongu stood up and clutched Yanni by his mouth, making him shut up. The grip of the god was strong enough to not just make Yanni shut up, but make a shiver down his spine. If you dare say another word, I will ensure you never live to see another day. I will not lose my life because of you. A surge of power was brewing all over Yongu as he said this. He let go of his grip, and Yanni fell to the ground on his backside. He was so filled with fear that he couldn't even move because he knew that this god could take him out in an instant, which was why it was even more confusing for him that the latter was kneeling on the ground. Looking at Quinn, he couldn't sense the same amount of energy out of him. This was because Quinn, of course, had his celestial energy internally and wasn't using it at the moment. What do you think we should do? Syl asked, peeking at the god who had gone to kneel again, almost instantly after dealing with Yanni. It's the God Slayer. I was pretty sure it was you, BB, but now that you are with the God Slayer, I can confirm you are indeed BB, Yongu stated. Listening to what the Celestial was saying, Quinn was trying to piece things together. The only ones that knew Quinn as BB were from Celestial space. Was it from his fight with Athos? Was this Celestial one of them that had seen him? Quinn, Princess said as she walked forward. Who are you? How did you make him do something like this? She was... just as bewildered by the actions of the god as the rest of the people. Please! Yanni finally got the nerve to shout out again. He was in a desperate situation. His last trump card was now not working, and he felt like there had to be some type of mistake. Explain why you won't fight these two. For a second, Yongu turned around and glared at Yanni again, but he kept his head down and stayed in his position out of respect for Celestial BB in front of him. BB is a god that has been banned from the celestial space, Yongu gulped before he went on to the following sentence. He is the one that has decided to go against us, against our ways, and fought hundreds of gods at once, defeating many of them, including me. Audible gasps spread throughout the crowds. Although they didn't quite know what was going on, without a doubt, the words they heard were impressive. It sounded almost impossible. To hear that their god had been defeated so easily was already a shock. This person had defeated several others